Which player are you looking forward to seeing the most in week 7? We had a lot of surprises in week 6. Put in the comments the player that you think is going to be breaking out next week and the guys that we're going to be talking about. If you get some of these players correct, we might even just give you a little treat. So comment below. In week 6, we've got to learn some new things about some new players. First of all, Drake Maye. Let's not bury the lead. Drake Maye is the headline of this week. Count me down as a guy that I wasn't sold on putting him in this week. You're talking about a very good Houston Texans defense on a week where you weren't going to have Ramondre Stevenson. Your O-line is doo-doo butter. There's only a couple okay receiving options. I thought this was going to be tough even for the best of quarterbacks. But Drake Maye really impressed me this week. Right away, off the rip, 3 touchdowns in his very first game. Add an additional 38 yards on the ground on only 5 attempts. It wasn't like he was just running and tucking every time because he was scared of the rush and couldn't handle the pressure. No, he stood in the pocket, but when it opened up and provided him a lane, he took it. 38 yards is very solid. But to do that against this defense, I think is very legitimate. When I'm looking at him as far as a dynasty asset, I am now going to be looking at him not in the 18-19 range like I was before. This automatically propels him up into probably more like the 13 to 15 range. And if he continues this, sky's the limit for Drake Maye. With that, Demario Douglas. Yes, Demario Douglas is another name that I'm really wanting to keep an eye out on. He had 9 targets, 6 receptions for 92 yards and a touchdown. In his game before, when Drake Maye just came in for 1 series, Drake Maye threw the ball 8 times on that. 3 of those went to Demario Douglas. This is a player that he is absolutely looking for, and he is a perfect fit for what Drake Maye does. This is somebody that can get down the field and catch the ball, but even can get open in quick, short area stuff. Drake Maye is going to be able to find them at varying levels. He's not one guy that can just play one area of the field. He can do both, and I think the big plays are going to be there, especially when he's out there running around trying to make a play. Demario Douglas is somebody that can go off script and catch a pass from him. I think this is an opportunity where we go out and we get Demario Douglas now before he balloons, because I think his price is only going to go up. This team is going to consistently be behind in games. They're going to have to be throwing the football, and Drake Maye and Demario Douglas, that's a pair that I want to have. Speaking of young quarterbacks, we had Caleb Williams looking pretty good this week. In fact, 3 of his last 4 games, we have multiple touchdown passes. He had 4 touchdowns this week against Jacksonville, and I get it. Jacksonville's not the best team ever, but to go in a London game, those are tough for anybody to go travel overseas, being off schedule with your sleep cycle and all of that kind of stuff. But he looks like the real deal. He's comfortable. He's even running around a little bit, had over 50 rushing yards in this game, which gives him back-to-back games with over 30 rushing yards. Caleb Williams is really showing what we thought we would see out of him right away, and I am bought in. I think he was more than worth the value. Yes, I probably still have Daniels slightly ahead of him, but it's getting closer. J.K. Dobbins was back this week, 25 rushing attempts. That was really good to see, especially in a game where they seemed to throw the ball a little bit more than I was expecting them to. He had 96 yards and a touchdown. We talked about him a little bit earlier on in the offseason, but he's somebody that I'm prioritizing getting now. I think he continues to get the work. And yes, he had a couple down games, but it was against teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, which they're really difficult to play against. So I'm not counting that against him. I think he's going to be somebody that's consistently getting 60, 70, 80 yards a game on the ground. We're going to see him a little bit in the air too, but he's going to get those opportunities close to the goal line, and those are invaluable. Tyrone Tracy is officially a problem for Devin Singletary. To be fair, I've been talking about him all season, and I've always thought he was a problem, but I think the rest of the world has now been awoken to Tyrone Tracy, this former Purdue running back that was formerly a wide receiver. In this past game, the numbers on the ground aren't eye-popping. After a 129-yard game last week, he only had 50 yards on 17 attempts this week, but he looked really good through the air, 6 receptions for 57 yards, and he got to do it on national television. Devin Singletary's always been a fine back, but this is at least a committee now. But it wouldn't be surprising to me if Tyrone Tracy would be maybe even the better back from here on out. Tyrone Tracy, the real deal for fantasy football. Chase Brown. Yeah, I wasn't sure how this one was going to go, but Chase Brown, I think, is now officially the lead back ahead of Zach Moss. It was close before between these two guys, but what really sold me this week was, yes, he had 10 attempts to the 6 attempts for Zach Moss, but both players fumbled. The difference was when Zach Moss fumbled, we didn't really see him anymore. When Chase Brown fumbled, he was right back in the game the very next play and even ripped off the huge touchdown. The touchdown, kind of a fluke at the end of the game. They're trying to make a big play. Those kind of things happen from time to time. It's not as much about that. It's about the opportunity. And I think Chase Brown has really taken the reins on this backfield.